thank you, Anand, and Seema and the whole team of Vikal for, opening this space for us. Chandni and Mohsin and everyone else, and thank you all for coming.
As you saw in the film, Shimoy sings beautifully. So, can we request her to come?
Oh, okay. ये दिल मीगे बेराम बेराम ये दिलम मीगे नरम नरम طاقت نداره دلم بی تو چه کنم پیشش که زیبا خیلی کوچیکه دنیا با یاد تو هم هر جا ترکت نکنم सुल्तान गलबम तो हस्ती दरवाजे हाय दिलमरा शिकस्ती बेईमान यारी बेगलबम तो बस्ती बौमन पेवस्ती हो अखनून अगरस तो दूरम बेहरचा बरियाद दीगे नबंदम दिलमरा सरशार मज़ार जुओ तमन्ना ए यार ज़ीबा
Was your research topic and what actually you were inspired by all the filmmaking and the poetry, but what was that initial thought that that made you take the flight from here all the way to Rana?
The research topic is the exiled filmmaker in post-revolution Iran, which is after the revolution happened in 1979. Two things inspired me, enough or made me like the what I fell in love with were number one, the poetry of Furugh. I deeply connected with it. It resonated in so many levels that I wanted to learn. Okay, that I wanted to learn Persian to read it in the original Farsi, and I mean, I was 21 when I first fell in love with Iranian cinema. Like a lot of you might have, because I was seeing the way you all were responding. Um, I didn't know that one could have so much guts. I was 21 in Calcutta. I was studying, doing my master's in film studies in Jadavpur University, a liberal space which is still fought and is still alive and thriving, though under attack, like many liberal spaces around India. But I didn't know that I could speak the way Furugh did, or I didn't know it's possible to be inspired even when you're living in a place like Iran. So I wanted to know where this inspiration came from. And when I first went to Iran, it was 2015. And at that point, I was 25. And then I realized even more that, how do I, as someone who wants to make films, or I've been singing since the age of 4, how do I continue preserving my voice in through whatever art form, expression. So I thought that maybe go to Iran and find out how they've done it for so many years, and maybe I'll get some answers. I don't know if I got answers. I hope you found maybe some answers, but I found a little bit more strength. Yeah, so these are the two things that inspired.
So what's the situation with the artists now? Because because what we get to know about them is through the news. So like most of the filmmakers like Moshe Nakmalbaf, and they were arrested, and I guess they are now living in London. They are not in Iran anymore. Plus at the same time Zafar Panahi was house arrested. And at the same time, there are filmmakers like Saeed Rustavi, very young filmmaker, and he makes very, blatantly political films, but nothing is happening to him. So, I mean, what is the situation exactly with the artists and filmmakers?
It's really bad right now after especially the 2022 protests that happened in Iran after the death of Masa Amini. I mean, artists and women have, the crackdown is even worse right now. I finished the film in 2023 February when Panahi was in prison. He was taken in prison again because over here he speaks of a 6 month period that he has to go back to at some point, but they called him back at that period. So when the film was selected at Berlinale, I couldn't share it with him. So he then started a hunger strike, after which he was, he could come out. He was released temporarily. But the house arrest, the clauses are all the same still. He cannot make films. Mohammad Rasulov, as some of you may have heard, has finally and quite tragically had to leave Iran because his film was selected at Cannes Film Festival and they were not allowing him to go out to attend the festival, and they held back the actors in the film. So he left illegally from Iran, which means that he is now, his life as an exile begins. So he cannot go back until the regime falls.
So through the film, like you start almost as an investigative journalist in terms of the form you're using in the film in the beginning, and then slowly it itself becomes a part of the film, that the cinema that you're paying tribute to. It becomes, the grammar becomes Iranian cinema. You bring in that social realism in a way where there's pains given to people who lost their lives in the struggle. So did you realize at a moment that the people that you're pursuing, the grammar you're using is invariably becoming part of that world?
Something happened in the first 3 minutes. I don't know if you might have felt as uncomfortable and attacked as I felt at that scene when that scene was happening before me. That scene where she basically looks at me and says, "Are you filming me?" Till before that, it felt like I was in a trance because literally I had watched all the possible films of the new wave and some here and there, whatever was like accessible to me. So when I went to Iran, it felt like I was still watching the films, but now I was a part of it. And I would hold the camera, and thankfully, this happened within the 7th day, and film in buses discreetly till she looks at me and says, "Are you filming me?" And I felt really, something happened. It was sudden. It felt like an attack. It felt like, oh my God, you're so wrong. You can't film like this. And at that point of time, I realized that I have to learn Farsi in a month somehow to make this film. And I did. And I realized the only way I can make the film is to for the language to change. I just cannot observe. I have to be a part of this story, and I am. It's my story. It's the story of a girl who's gone from Calcutta to Iran after falling in love with Iranian cinema, and poetry. So I thought that it was all there. I only had to learn Persian and start interacting with people and keep those interactions. So after that, the film takes it takes a verite turn where I am a part of this reality. I interject it, I sing, you hear me. So much of it is so embarrassing for me to see again, like even the singing. I've been a very, thank you, I now also believe it's beautiful. But it took me 7 years to convince myself that it's beautiful, very we all could be awkward in so many ways, right? The way I laugh. A lot of people had told me earlier that why are you doing so many hms and has, and why are you laughing so much? But then that was the language that the film took, and I first had to, tell myself that it's okay. And this is your film, and you're a part of the story. You're a character in the film. You're a protagonist, not the protagonist, but one of the people in the film. And you are expected to respond. And I became okay with that. And then I was okay to keep all of these things. And the film, henceforth, becomes like a journey. And the brief that I gave my editors, worked with 2 editors and then a consultant editor. None of them are here today, unfortunately. But I told them to retain the element of this journey because, like in a journey, the act of walking becomes important. For me, exactly that was important. It wasn't like reaching a certain destination. It wasn't like I would meet the filmmakers and I'd be like, the film is done. I was hoping to be led somewhere where even I don't know, you know. So I didn't go towards a certain sahil or, you know, a shore or a destination. But I just kept walking, and that is what I tried to retain in the film.
You know, you have portrayed the story. Actually, you have, you know, filmed these brave people जो औरतों के हक और हकूक के लिए लड़ रहे हैं और ऐसे मुश्किल हालात में. और सिनेमा केवल दिलबस्तगी का सामान नहीं होता है, एंटरटेनमेंट का टूल्स नहीं होता है. ये टेर भी देता है, खाक भी लगाता है, अलग भी जगाता है. हमने अपने इंडियन सिनेमा के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में देखा है, गज्जन बाई से नरगिस की यात्रा या नसीम बानो से सायरा बानो की यात्रा, तो बहुत पोइटिकल है, बहुत ही कमाल है. और जब वो और उस औरत को रोने कहा गया तो मुझे लगा कि सबसे आसान काम दिया गया है, बिकॉज ईरान की औरतों को के लिए रोना तो बहुत आसान है, हंसने का सबब बहुत कम मिलता है. ईरानी सिनेमा जो है, जफर पनाही, उनकी सबसे बड़ी खासियत क्या है कि वहाँ वो गलतियों का उद्भेदन जो है, वट एवर माल प्रैक्टिस यू नो प्रिवलेंट दे अनफॉल इट इन वेरी ऑनेस्ट मैनर. और जब ऐसा होता है तो इलाज की संभावना बनती है. तो हम ईरान का जो है स्वरूप बदलेगा, वहाँ परिदृश्य बदलेगा, औरतों के खिलाफ जो माहौल है वो बदलेगा.
How long did you stay there, and how were you connecting with these people that they gave you quite a lot of unlimited?
So I first went to Iran in the December of 2015, and I kept going and coming. I went 5 times up until the end of 2018. And I think about access, it's because I feel that it's because I made the effort to learn Persian, and not so many people do it. And also I was doing a PhD, and I think music also has to do a lot with this. And this whole combination, especially Persian, made people take me, you know, thankfully not like a fangirl. Yeah, someone who traveled, you know, across the borders to meet them, learn Persian, and access truly came from that. And I also believe that documentaries such as these are born a lot out of lived experiences. So I literally lived there, and these people, the people you see in the film, they're my friends. They're like family to me. I'm in very good touch with them. You know, a lot of them came to Berlinale and other festivals. So we're very well connected. So relationships grew, life was lived, a lot of fun was had, and yeah, I mean, the film was born, you know, amidst all of this.
Yeah. How did you go to public places? Because obviously, if you weren't going to get a permit,
Yeah. I didn't ask for any permits because I'd have to ask the regime, and I wasn't going to. I'd even try that out. Yeah, I'll tell you how I filmed. So, in public spaces in the beginning, I started filming discreetly till the 7th day when I was caught out in this manner, and then I stopped, you know, doing this. But I went back to the buses a lot because that was happening to me every day. I would take the bus off and on, you know, go to my Persian class and come back. So that was a part of my daily commute. But after I started learning Persian, I started doing Fuzuli with everyone, which literally means like, how are you doing? How is this day? I mean, it just eased things up. And then the same people who, asked me to stop, if you notice towards the end of the film, there's someone else who's sitting in a similar position and smiles at the camera. So the, access, it comes full circle. And conversations and learning of the language opened up the space. So that happened. Secondly, if you notice, none of the dialogue sequences are in public spaces. Like all the people that I filmed are within their own houses. And Panahi I filmed in the car. And if some of you watched some Iranian cinema, films of Kiarostami or Panahi, the car becomes a very important space because it's this intermediate space between outside and the inside where you can watch without being watched. because otherwise in this city, you like those shots of the eyes. It totally, I was amazed. It was bizarre seeing that open and close on a highway, and it's a coffee advert. So, yeah, so I had to stop. I had to ask my friend to stop the car in the highway somehow, and I took that shot and came back in. So I had to think it through. So indoors was mostly where the conversations happen, and outdoors I was walking around. It's funny. I figured a way to do sound, and hence it's not supposed to look very polished, and it doesn't. But I was filming, and I wore my backpack in front, and my sound equipment was somewhere there, and that's how I've captured sound. And also the other thing is I look very Indian. So in the beginning, I was very uncomfortable with it because it was so conspicuous. But then I took it to my advantage, and when I wanted to film outdoors, I would wear colorful clothes because that's kind of struck. The first thing I noticed in the beginning was I entered the bus and I wore a green, and everyone else was in black or blue or dark, darker colors, because the hijab is dark. The logic is to erase your body, make you all look the same. But my hijab was also, my scarf was yellow, my coat was green and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's how I saw myself fitting in this space visually. I took advantage of it. So I made sure that I looked a little bit more like a tourist. So people thought I was a tourist. And no one really questioned me. Yeah, and it also kind of reverses because when I speak Farsi, fluently, I also amalgamate later, and this boy of maybe 12 or 11 stops me and says, "Why is your hijab not on your head?" So it constantly keeps shifting from being accepted, getting access because of a tourist, and then I try to be smart about it.
Then look some reformer who can work for the freedom of the woman. It's the comment of the reformer. Some in Iran also there may be some reformer, political reformer, social reformer.
You can read that while you're in this film. You would have.
I mean, I couldn't have done everything. The history is of more than 100 years, and I also I stuck to the poetic treatment, and it's my journey. And I also stayed a little bit away from politicians, to just be careful. I wanted to come back home. Yeah.
Filmmakers are also super reformers.
Also, if you notice the two men in a taxi, they talk about they don't know where they are, what their positions are. The same people are absolutely anti-government right now, anti-regime right now. But at that point of time, the fear mechanism and the brainwashing mechanism, it really works in very deep levels. So the men in the taxi, they were open enough to want to talk to us, but they also kept saying, women should be modest like you are. We don't have a problem if you don't wear the chador or the hijab, but modesty lies inside you, which is the most dangerous thing, and which is what Furug's verses were against. Modesty is not in what I talk about or what I wear. It's a concept of veiling from the inside, and everyone's against any kind of veil, which is equal to being censored, right?
But women otherwise don't come out to celebrate in that manner.
No, they do. They come out to celebrate. They steal every opportunity they get. Okay, but they are not allowed to watch football match in a stadium with men. There's this incredible film by Panahi. It's called Offside. I think it's streaming on Movie. So if you do get a chance, please watch it. I refer to it. But then, since that space is not allowed, there's no stopping people. So and also games do that. Suddenly rules are relaxed, and there was no policing then on that day itself. Only on that.
I wanted to ask about that one bit where you're given, in my understanding, the no surgery bit, two sort of sides of the coin. Like one girl who was doing it and had a sense of bizarre acceptance around it, feeling that this is going to be something that's going to bring in more acceptance for me, and the other one sort of revolted. I wanted to know that, because for you, whilst because you said that you were living that experience, was that a conscious choice that you were like, okay, I've met this person and I wanted to know that who did you encounter first when you got to know about the whole act and the whole perspective of the nose job?
I would see at least 5 to 7 women every day with a band-aid on their nose. And I hadn't seen it anywhere else. This was also the first place I'd ever traveled to internationally. And even after traveling to so many places with this film, I haven't seen this anywhere else. I please tell me if you have. Women flaunting the band-aids on their noses as if like, they're just very proud of it. So I found it a little strange. And then I was very intrigued by it and I wanted to talk to women. And then I wanted to talk to women who had done it. And then I also wanted to talk to women who didn't want to do it. So, because it's not my place to take a stand in. For me, both were equally interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
both are bittersweet sort of acceptance, but
Yeah.
very different like choices.
Yeah. Yeah.
That sort of acceptance.
It is just bizarre, so that bone sequence really shows the bizarreness of it. So I couldn't believe it was happening, so I kept it. Yeah.
What I found quite remarkable were these young girls sitting there, and the teacher actually telling them they are non-sexual beings, right? They're supposed to cover their body, and them actually saying that we will teach you how to show yourself to men. And that's the most sexual thing you can say to such a young child.
Yeah. It's again a part of the same mechanism, propaganda mechanism, which teachers have to say the same things that the regime has asked them to say again and again and again. But the teachers are allies over here because when they erupt into song, nobody stops them. They're just doing their jobs, but they gave me the permit to. That was the only permit I got to make the film. So they called me and they asked me, they please go ahead and film. So, and fortunately, all of these girls that you see, they were in class 10, maybe 9 or 10, and they've all graduated. So it all worked out in the end. Yeah.